Hey, everybody, it's me. It's your old buddy, Steve Simonson, and we're doing it again. What's happening now is I'm talking, you're listening to me talk. And now that you've got that brilliant insight and update, I want to just tell you what's on the agenda today. So, this is part three of our mini series about sourcing in India. In part one and two, I've already kind of gone through some of the contexts and some of the expectations that I have. And here in the final installment in this series, I'm going to kind of wrap up some of the takeaways and some of the summaries about sourcing in India with some lessons that reflect on sourcing kind of at large. Doesn't matter where you source. If you're going to do a private label or branded product, I don't like the name private label so much as it implies you're just putting a sticker on something. If you're really trying to build a brand and you're going to do your own contract manufacturing, these are best practices. At least they're practices that I try to employ throughout the world. And my team, more accurately said, does this kind of work wherever it is in the world. And that spans pretty much every continent except, obviously, Antarctica. Not a huge amount of production down there. So let's talk about some of the things. In fact, let me just tell you, now we're into the smart section of the presentation because I've got my glasses on. And that helps me read and see. And I know you got a reflection here, but I don't know how to stop that. So I just want to make sure I give you some of the finer points that I've observed here on my trip to India. So first of all, it's a dynamic place. It's a great place in many ways. And there's aspects of it that are culture shocky to somebody coming from America, especially after the kind of a pandemic lull in global travel. I have had the opportunity to go to Mexico and to the UK and to Netherlands, but I have not been kind of in Asia proper, or certainly not the subcontinent, since before the pandemic. And the last time I was in India was in 2017. So, as always, I appreciate the culture shock moments, and I value kind of the differences that we see. And some of them are amusing, some of them are kind of shocking, and others are just fun. And that's how I try to see it. So let's see if I can get rid of these glasses. I'll just pretend that I can see it, and you guys can see me anyway. So as a first, kind of point, one of the best things about traveling is to be able to get rest, right? So today is not one of those days. It's already kind of late into the evening here in India. And then later on, about midnight, I will, go to the airport. I'm going to fly to London and then move on to some meetings there the same day in Southampton, England. So this is going to be one of those, 24 to 36 hour days. And hopefully, if I get lucky, I'll sleep on the plane. So as I talked about in part two, if you caught that, it actually takes work. It actually takes effort if you're going to look at doing something that is, meaningful, that has the potential to be impactful. And I do want to call your attention to the empowery.com website, where I've posted blog posts for India Sourcing Part 1, 2, and 3. They're all now live, and you can go check those out. And you can see additional photos and videos and so forth that gives you, again, greater context and some written insights that you can refer to back later. So, for example, if you're listening to this on a podcast or watching it live or some recording somewhere, then this will give you the opportunity. If you just go to empowery.com, you can go to the blog section and you'll find all three of the Sourcing in India articles. So let's just, at the high level, remember what we have to do when we're sourcing. So as a matter of process, we have to start with the outcome that we want, right? So we don't just randomly fly off to a country and then figure out what to buy. We have some idea from a product discovery process online. We figure out, hey, this might sell. We try to refine the specifications. We try to visualize and even make tangible some of the differences that we need to have versus our competitors. And you do that quite often by just reading the reviews and figuring out, can you engineer out the negatives, and can you focus and achieve the positives that the customers are giving in product reviews? So starting with the outcome that you want, pretty reasonable and makes a lot of sense. My point here is you don't travel for the sake of travel. You're traveling for an outcome. And you better know that. It's much easier to go somewhere, a destination that you've predestined and pre-organized versus just kind of wandering the wilderness and hoping you'll find up find out that great idea or end up with this winning product. So you've already done that kind of online product search, and then you move into the sourcing stage, and now you know what you want, right? Next thing is to understand your requirements. This is now getting into the specifications of an item. You're getting into the details, thickness, length, width, gauge, the metallurgy numbers. What are the details? There's so many things that I really encourage you guys to know your requirements ahead of time, far beyond just here's a picture. And we've kind of been spoiled a little bit by just sending pictures off to China, and we leave a lot to chance when we do that. No matter where you send the picture, by the way, I'm not picking on China specifically. That process of just sending pictures and getting a perfect outcome every time it's not so great. And I would generally encourage you to get deeper in terms of your requirements. And that next level of depth comes with providing diagrams. Make some diagrams for your factories and your potential suppliers. If you can, they go beyond just kind of line drawings and into CAD drawings where they have specs and lengths and widths, and you can even run 3D kind of prints on it, to get a physical copy, or 3D modeling to do online kind of versions that show you everything that you want to see. So diagrams are important. Now I know, again, if you've been sourcing for any great length of time from Asia and China specifically, you just send pictures often of your competition's item, or send them a sample, and that still has value. That still has merit. In fact, that works in India too, right? If you send pictures and then samples, you're going to come up closer to your target item. But the idea of differentiation and the idea of understanding when things are off spec really do trace back to diagrams and understanding your points of differentiation to begin with. So, for example, if your competition has a hinge and the hinge is made of aluminum and yours is made of steel or something, that's stronger, has a better tensile strength, then your product is likely to be better. But you need to be able to articulate that. You need to be able to understand those nuanced differences. Even at a curve of an item, if the thickness is reduced, from 3 millimeter to 2 millimeter, maybe visually you can't see that, but that creates a breaking point on that product. These are the types of things that I want you to really concentrate on, all those little details. And getting CAD drawings and so forth for an item really is not that expensive. And there may be a resource in India we can share with you later that can help you with those types of things. The next thing, once you have those things, is you want to do an RFQ process, right? You send out to some of the potential candidates for your factory, and you send them an RFQ, and you just say, hey, what's the price on this? Here's some of the details that I'm looking for. That's kind of an easy way to get the process started. But remember that price is not the only thing when you do a request for quote. Again, you're trying to compare the quality and the overall value proposition, because it's not just price. If they say, yeah, I'll give you a cheap price and I'll deliver it next year, that doesn't help you. Or if they say I can deliver it immediately, but the price is double the competition, also doesn't help you. And the only way you know these details about the kind of market price is to get multiple quotes to the extent that you can. I don't like buying products in a vacuum. The competition gives you some index because you can figure out what they're selling it for, and then if you have a margin. But that RFQ process really is important. But it's about the overall relationship, not just price. And then finally, you may also choose to compare samples at this stage of the game, right? You actually get physical samples where some of the differences between the competitors or potential providers are more clear to you, right? The tangible feel may give you some opportunity to kind of see what's happening, with this guy versus that guy. The weight, the gauge, the density, the shine, the material, whatever it is, physical samples are always necessary. And then finally, once you pick a winner, you kind of want to figure out, I want to trust, but I need to verify that trust. So if you're going to pick a winner in the context of a factory, you then need to figure out, well, what do I want to do? A factory audit and send an inspection company in there to kind of verify what I think I already know, the size of the company, how long they've been around, their revenue, staff, factory upkeep, those types of things, looking out. Do they have a bunch of child labor there, right? These types of things. And so a factory audit may be kind of the last step that you take before you cross that finish line and call it done. There are other process control elements you may choose to go deeper on, checking on the ISO certificates, checking on safety and environmental claims, social responsibility, the living conditions, and working conditions, for that matter, of the workforce. All of those, there are programs and third-party inspection companies that will do those types of surveys and audits for you to make that part of the equation, that part of the due diligence, easier for you to execute. And then once you have finally made that selection and they passed all the hurdles, then you move into any tooling, any molding or sample process. So let's just say, for the sake of discussion, you're doing injection molding. They got to make the mold, right? So they have to make the tooling, and then they make the mold, and then they move into production. And understanding and owning that process is really important, particularly if you have specialized tooling or molds that are custom and unique for your company. I would highly recommend holding those at a third-party location. Now, there are some large companies, maybe public companies, or maybe you've doing business with them a long, long time. Maybe you choose to trust them. But I have seen many times, not once, not twice, not like gossip on the street. I've seen many times where, factories will take your mold and they'll run it for somebody else. So you paid for all the mold, production costs, tooling, etc., which can amount to hundreds at a minimum, but often mid-thousands and sometimes tens of thousands of dollars. And they'll just use it for another customer, possibly a competitor, but most often it's somebody that you'll never know purchase from them, somebody in a different continent even. But the point is, molds and tools and all this, they have a lifespan to them, right? You don't want to have somebody else using the lifespan of your stuff if you paid for it, if you own it, and certainly if it's your proprietary brand. So that means that you need to really take custody and control of that to avoid any surprises. No lightning bolts on that. And then finally, once you're done with any kind of pre-production steps, you do move into the actual production. This might involve you having an inspector on site if the process is complex or there are aspects that you don't fully understand or that are vital to the outcome. Then you may choose to have an inspector there on site while they're producing it to look for trouble. Most e-commerce companies, most brand builders are usually just doing a pre-shipment inspection, which means production's already complete and the product's boxed and on pallets and wrapped up and ready to be shipped. And then the inspector comes in and pulls some pieces to do kind of spot checks. And they'll just pull pieces, at random and do a certain percentage of tests. And if the tests pass, everybody's happy and life moves on. If they don't pass, they do another set of samples and see if that passes. And then they look for solving any defects or any missed specifications. So, ideally, everything passes and the shipment now is ready to ship. And really now it's time to turn it over to the logistics department, right? Manufacturing's kind of done. And operationally, the logistics team needs to now move that product. Maybe you have your factory giving you DDP pricing. Maybe you have a freight forwarder who's taking care of it, giving you a DDP price or some variation of that. Whatever it is, that's when the next part of the process begins. So production is done and then logistics process begins. I want to give a shout out to Megla. She was able to introduce myself and my colleagues here in India to a couple great resources, including a third-party inspector and a freight company. And both of those specialists here in India were a great introduction. So thank you, Megla, and we appreciate your help and support there. And we certainly love what you're doing over there at your India group there, getting people educated and giving them access to tools and so forth. Empowery is a big fan of Megla and company over there. Margaret and the whole gang, we really do appreciate the help. So thank you again. And then finally, I would just, point out that even when you're asking factories, so if we're, let's back up out of the process and back into the the investigation. When you're searching for factories, if you ask a factory, can you do this? It's very common, especially in Asia, particularly in China, for people to say, yes, we can. Yes, we can. And that, yes, we can, also has a wide variation of what that actually means. Yes, we can could mean, sure, no problem. We do it all the time. It can mean, probably, it kind of looks familiar, but I don't really know. It can mean, heck no. That's way outside of our skill set. And it could also say, I don't know what you're talking about, so I'm just saying yes, right? And there's a whole, there's there's just so many ways that yes we can, or yes I understand. All of those things can mean the opposite, or some variation in between. So when you are on the ground sourcing, you really need to look for body language. You need to ask questions. You need to come at it from different directions to be sure that they really do understand the requirements. Some of that is reduced when you have written specs and you have drawings and CADs and so forth, but it really is a responsibility of the sourcing person to make sure that your counterpart understands what you're asking for. And I would highly recommend, now again, this is just crazy old Steve talking, but I'd highly recommend not speaking in slang, trying not to use colloquialisms that are local to your area of the world. I would avoid telling long, drawn-out stories about how important things are. None of that will matter. None of that helps the situation. The only thing that matters is what's written down, right? So if it's not written, it's not part of the equation, and that's a fair way to look at it from the perspective of the factory. Just because you had a long session and you said all of these things, if it wasn't written down, it's not on the purchase order or some other corresponding document, really it's your fault, not their fault, if you are not if you don't get what you expected based on these kind of side conversations. So my point about this is, if you don't take responsibility for the communication, you're going to open up yourself to some potential surprises. And while English is much more kind of universal here in India, it's still kind of the second language, right? All of these regions in India have many languages. It's as I said in the blog article, India is not homogenous in any way, not even a little bit. Wildly varied, different religions, different customs, different languages, as I mentioned earlier, different foods, right? All of this is so crazy different that we shouldn't take into consideration and go, well, I'm buying from India, I should just think about this one thing or think about this one way of doing things. You really need to kind of customize it for each relationship that you form to make sure that they understand what you're asking for and that they can actually do it. And your mission is not to get them to say yes if they can't do it. Your mission actually is to get them, I'd like to ask, what are you best at? What's your best selling product? What have you done the longest? Show me the product you're most proud of, because I want to find out what they're good at. I'm not trying to jam my idea down them and get them to agree. That's a tenuous agreement if they agree to do something they're not comfortable with. And it's fraught with risk, right? And so every time we have a conversation, half of our energy, more than half probably, is spent on trying to disqualify the candidate. Not because we're, mean or mad or any of that, but it's just because we don't want to set them up to fail. Our mission is to not waste our time, not waste their time, and to bring the project towards success. And if we kind of trust too much or expect that they understand all these, weird slang sayings that we're saying to them, or have empathy for this long drawn out story about how we got screwed at a past claim or a past project, none of that matters to them. Most of it, they will nod and say yes, and there may even be some level of kind of comprehension, but not enough in the I've witnessed this many times from colleagues or other people on the road. It's not enough comprehension for you to achieve your outcome. You need to really break it down, be friendly, be fair, be firm, and most of all, be clear and articulate about what you really want. Nuances will create problems if you are not careful. So I want to say thanks to Pabna Sharma, who really helped set up this whole trip. It's 2 straight weeks, a lot of effort there. And again, a shout out to Megla and her great network introductions and all the people there. We don't do sourcing for other companies at this stage of the game. We only do it, for ourselves. So I've had a lot of inquiries saying, hey, can you find this for me, or can you help me? Or, how do I get set up to, to have your team help me? And I just apologize for those folks in advance. We just don't have the capacity to take external work. I'm just doing this as kind of a friendly, share and as part of my kind of volunteer work for empowery.com. So the summary is tangible results are things that you should expect to take away from a sourcing trip. Actionable things like, can I make a PO? Can I order a sample? Did we get a spec? Have we moved the ball forward? Those are tangible outcomes, including the point of we're ready to place a PO and launch this product. Those are tangible outcomes that we should expect. And that's kind of how you measure the financial ROI, right? I've flown all over the world. I'm in hotels. I got planes, trains, automobiles all over the place. And there are costs with that, not the least of which is my own time. And so I have to take those tangible outcomes and compare that on the ROI to be sure that I'm doing a good job, that I'm a good steward for the company resources. But there are some intangibles I want to talk about just for a minute. In one of the blog articles, I talked about relationships. It's the relationships that are intangible, but they have the potential to make the ROI, 10x or 100x the tangible upfront outcomes. So let's just say, for the sake of discussion on this trip, I'm able to place a PO for 3 or 4 product lines. That's really good and wildly successful trip. And I have to say, this has been a successful trip. India is full of opportunity, and it's dynamic and it's exciting. There's a lot of ROI that's already going to happen as a result of that, or has a high potential. I mean, until I see the product in the warehouse, it's hard to call it a win, but it has high potential. But it's the relationships that we have already reinforced or developed new here on this trip that will pay dividends for years to come. And that relationship dividend is again more valuable than the tangible. And it's something I want you guys to not forget, because it's also very difficult to get that relationship ROI if you're not going out in person. Now, again, I know not everybody can get out and go see factories all over the world. There's still plenty of restrictions. China just increased their quarantine from 21 days, which is already untenable, to 28 days plus, that's in a hotel, 28 days at home. So this is like 2 months. They're not interested in people coming in from the outside. So I am lucky enough that I've got a team there that can keep our China stuff going. And the same goes for Vietnam and Malaysia. We use third-party places when we can't get our team there. And India is kind of no different from a standpoint. We need to get boots on the ground to see people build relationships and create those results, both tangible and intangible, that I just talked about. So it's been great memories, wonderful experiences. I highly encourage you guys, if you get the chance, and it's part of your business strategy, to get out there and go source in, your factory kind of desired geography. So it depends on where you want to source, right? I think India has super high potential for Europe, especially, in the UK. I think it does quite well in the United States as well. I met with a company, and 40% of Walmart sales in a particular category come from this company, right? And same with Target and same with Costco. Like, these guys are dominating from India inside the United States. So it's not that India can't be competitive, but I do think that Mexico will give India a little bit of a run for the money in the coming, let's say, 3 to 5 years. So that's it for me, everybody. I do appreciate you guys playing along at home as I go on this fun adventure. I see I got a comment coming in here. Oh, we got my buddy Michael. I don't know if you're still there, Michael, but thank you. And I thought I was going home tonight, but it turns out that I'm going to London and staying over in London for a few days, actually in Southampton, to conduct some final business there on another company. And then Saturday, I fly home, everybody, to Seattle. And Sunday morning at 5 a.m., I go back to the airport to fly to Phoenix. So it's never a dull moment, but I feel grateful and thankful to be able to do all that. So thanks one and all for following the journey. And if there's anything we can do for you, don't hesitate to contact the good people at Empowery.com, and they can give you a hand. And I certainly welcome you to join Empowery as well. One final note: if you are interested in coming to extraordinarily mastermind, it's going to be amazing over the course of 3 days. It's going to be in Miami. It's only $199. We've rented out this giant mansion, or Empowery has. I'm kind of riding the coattails, and it's going to be so fun. And that, we're going to do some hors d'oeuvres, and then we're going to do a kind of a day of networking and meeting, and we're even giving away a bunch of prizes like a big screen and Oculus, and I think an iPad and stuff like that. And then a VIP, really swank dinner, a nice catered affair. And then the next day, kind of like a pool party and just more networking. So all that for $199. You will not beat it. That's in Miami in December. Go to Empowery.com events, and you guys can check that out. So again, thank you, Michael. Good to see you, buddy. I actually just saw your picture of you mud covered from St. Lucia, and I noticed that I was in the back with complete unspoiled skin, no mud on my skin. But that was a fun time and a great memory. So good to see you online. Thanks again, everybody. We're out for now, and until next time, bye-bye.